All right, everyone. So if you have any questions as we go, please feel free to type them in that questions window. John's going to take care of you, and then also we'll have the Q&A portion at the end. If we're not able to answer your questions either in the chat window or the Q&A, we'll definitely make sure to follow up with you after this webinar. So with that, I want to give a little introduction to Bluebeam Software as a company before we launch into the new things in 2015. So Bluebeam Software is not your typical software company. We really try to push the limits of the world's most document-intensive industries by creating intuitive PDF-based digital markup and collaboration solutions. And our approach to development is actually really simple. We pick our customers' brains, engage in ongoing conversations with them, and walk through their projects to understand their workflows. Our solutions evolve as our customers' needs do, and the idea is to keep our finger on the pulse of what's happening in the AEC industry and constantly push the limits of what's possible. I can tell you that every single feature that is in this new release that we're going to be going over, they were a result of direct suggestions from customers such as you guys. So thanks for that. So Revu streamlines processes throughout the entire project lifecycle. By viewing, editing, and sharing documents quickly, you can keep projects moving forward with less idle time spent waiting around. And with Bluebeam Revu, customers are able to accelerate all stages of the project, from design review all the way to closeout and facilities management. It's kind of an end-to-end collaboration solution. So with that, the moment of truth. These are the new features in Revu 2015. And I'm going to walk through them right now and kind of explain what they are, and then I'll be showing you how they work live in action in just a few moments here. But firstly, I want to touch on our new batch processing features. So first of all, we have Batch Slip Sheet. So Batch Slip Sheet automates the process of keeping complex file sets up to date, allowing users to append, prepend, or replace, aka slip sheet, existing page content with new file revisions. The second process, Batch Overlay, automates the process of creating overlay comparisons between multiple pairs of files. And lastly, Batch Comparison has been enhanced with the new auto-matching functions that are also found in Batch Slip Sheet and Batch Overlay, and it has some general UI improvements as well. Next, some of you may already be familiar with Sets. Sets is a feature that enables you and your team to navigate large collections of individual PDFs as if they were a single multi-page document. And with Sets 3.0, we've introduced the following improvements. So first, Sets files can now be added to custom categories that you can arrange in any desired order. Secondly, you now have the options of revision slip sheeting and filter enhancements. And lastly, you'll see some significant performance enhancements across the board. Next, we have Cloud Plus. So Cloud Plus is a new markup tool. It combines the functionality of the cloud and callout markups into a single tool, which saves you several clicks each time you use it, and also makes it a single markup that will appear in your markups list. So it makes it easier to track in that markups list as well. Next, these sketch tools are probably the most requested feature of all time, and we finally have them. I'm stoked to see them. They're essentially a suite of markup tools that allow you to quickly create polygons, polylines, rectangles, and ellipse markups to exact measurements based on the calibrated scale of your document. It's not going to be replacing AutoCAD anytime soon, but it's still tremendously helpful if you're looking to draw to a specific measurement. Next, we have Dynamic Toolset Scaler. It enables markups to automatically resize precisely and proportionally when you use them on documents of different scales or on viewports of different scales. And it really eliminates that need to create separate tool sets for working with separate scales. Next, we've improved Spaces. At its core, Spaces allows you to sort and report on markups based on the user-defined zones they reside in. And with Review 2015, you can now copy and paste spaces across other pages and files, create an area measurement markup directly from spaces, and even add hyperlinks to and from spaces placed on the document. Next, we've also improved capture. So we introduced capture with our previous release, which allowed you to embed galleries of images within markups. And with Capture 2.0, you can now include video with audio using your camera tool in addition to images, same as before, which really helps improve your team's ability to communicate site issues. The PDF summary view has also been reformatted to feature capture images more prominently, and it's now possible to see which markups contain capture media from directly within the markups list. And lastly, Studio has also seen some great updates. You can now define studio session end dates ahead of time. You can also create shareable project file links. You can essentially share a web link to download a project file without inviting them to your Studio project or necessitating them to access it via Studio. It's essentially just a link they can open in their web browser. Next, you can define Studio project permissions on a per folder basis. And lastly, you can now update a project file from a session without finalizing that session and closing it out first. So all great stuff. And I'm sure you're tired of hearing me talk and you're ready to see it in action. So let's do it. So throughout the project lifecycle, there are bound to be multiple different revisions, and these batch features that we've introduced in this version really help it to be much easier to manage those multiple revisions. And first one I want to go over is batch slip sheet. So when these revisions are given, you often need a way to transfer your comments onto the newly issued drawings. And in our prior release, Review 12, you could manually do this by going into our thumbnails panel here and manually kind of changing up the sheets there. And that worked fine if you had 1 or 2 sheets you were replacing. But what if you have 50 of them or 100 of them or more? That was not very manageable. So we introduced a new feature, Batch Slip Sheet, which allows you to slip sheet multiple drawings into a set all at once in one batch process. And before I show you this in action, I want to point out that of all the new features, this is the only feature that is specific to a certain version. So this feature is in Review Extreme only. Everything else I'm going to show you in this demo is going to be available in all 3 versions. It's only the batch slip sheet that is Extreme only. So let's see how it works. I'm going to go ahead and just close my deck here. To access batch slip sheet, you're going to go to File, Batch, and Slip Sheet. So in this dialog box, firstly I'm going to add all of my current pages here. So let's add all my existing pages. So there's my originals. And now let's add my revisions. In addition to adding files like that, I can also do this drop down and add an entire folder to just kind of save me a click there a little bit easier. There we go. And I can define how Review is going to match these pages. So by default, it's file name and page index. I can also do page labels. So let's say that instead of adding a bunch of individual one-page PDFs, these were multi-page PDFs, and maybe they have different numbers of pages. Well, you can use page labels now. But I'm going to leave it alone. I'll just do a file name and page index there and match them up. And here we go. Review has automatically matched these pages together, and I have the ability to override that if I want. I can move them up or down or remove them entirely. And if you're wondering how did it match them together, well, in Review 2015, we have kind of smart matching functionality where it's able to identify, looking at these file names, that This is the same name as the original, just with a Rev 1 at the end. And it's smart enough to know that Rev 1 probably means revision 1. And that smart matching functionality is in all three of those batch features that we're going to be covering. I can define what I want to happen when I slip sheet, whether it's entirely replacing those old pages or if I just want to insert the revisions before them. I'll go ahead and insert them just so we can still see both. Whether I want to copy over my markups and whether they're flattened or not. And I'm going to go ahead and stamp my current pages as being superseded if they're being replaced by revisions. So let's go ahead and run it. So now I have this little report. It's telling me that I slip sheeted 5 pages. It's telling me which ones were slip sheeted with what. But if I want to see just sort of a bird's eye view, I have this nice report I can create. Let's take a look at it. Again, it's telling me 5 sheets, and all these sheets are hyperlinked. So if I want to see my revision, I can look at that, or my original. And there's that humongous superseded stamp. There's no question this is the old one. And for the revision with all the markups, since I set the settings to kind of insert a page before this, here it is right here. So this is my revision with all those markups kind of scraped over. So this really makes that slip sheeting process, especially when you have lots and lots of separate PDFs that you're working with, it really makes it a lot easier than trying to manually slip sheet your documents. So next I want to cover batch overlay. So in order to access batch overlay, you're actually going to go to almost the exact same spot. So you'll go to File, Batch, and Overlay. And once again, I'm going to add my, my files here. I'll start with my originals and add my revisions. Once again, I can define how those pages are matched. There we go. And very similar dialog box, but you'll notice that now I have colors here for each layer. So my original is going to be red, and my revisions will be green. And I can, of course, override that if I want different colors. And since we're working with overlay documents and Revu is going to create some new layered PDFs for us, I can define what the output folder is for those layered PDFs. So let's go ahead and put them in this difference folder right here. All right, so let's take a look at what that looks like. Again, I'm going to get this little report showing me that it overlaid 5 pages. I can also create that same report. It's all hyperlinked. I can see my revision, my original, and the new overlaid PDF right here. And just like regular overlay documents, anywhere where the 2 sheets overlap, where they're exactly the same, it's just going to be black. Anywhere where they are colored, coded, will show the color for that specific layer. And if I look at the Layers tab, I can toggle those on and off. And in this scenario, I only did 1 set of revisions, so there's only the original and the 1 revision layer. But if I'd done multiple sets of revisions, I would have essentially 1 layer for each set of revisions in there. So again, this is really handy. It's making the process of overlaying large quantities of drawings far easier than having to do them sort of one by one there. All right then, so moving onwards, the next batch process I'd like to show you is batch compare documents. So I'll go ahead and close all these tabs out. Again, it's going to be File, the batch menu here, and compare documents. Once again, load your originals in there. Add your revisions. Define how you want to match them. And here we go. I have my matched documents up here, and I'll go ahead and set up what I want my output folder to be. Let's do this difference folder. Go ahead and run it. The great thing about these batch features is, as I'm sure you've realized, the process for doing it is very, very similar for all three of them. So once you get the hang of running one process, you pretty much know how to do the other ones as well. It's very, very similar. So let's look at that report for compare documents. Once again, I can view my revision, my original, and my compared document. And just like regular document comparison, Revu automatically added these cloud markups around all of the differences it found between the original and that revision I loaded in there. So again, just really making that process of comparing documents far easier by also introducing that auto matching functionality as well. It just makes it easier than ever. So those are all of the batch features I wanted to go ahead and cover with you. Next, I want to move on to Sets 3.0 and our improvements there. So I'll close these documents out. I'm going to navigate to Sets through this tab access panel, and I can just jump right into Sets. And when I first click the button to create a set, I'm going to get this little warning here. And what this warning is letting me know is that sets that are created in Revu 2015 are not going to be backwards compatible with Revu 12 and earlier. That is kind of a necessary evil in order for us to introduce these performance enhancements. We did have to make some changes that made it not backwards compatible. So what I would recommend to alleviate that is if you have any existing sets that you've created in older versions, make sure to save a backup copy before you bring them over into 2015. And then any users that are on that old version can use that backup copy to access the sets that way. Great. So before I launch into this, I want to touch on again exactly what the sets feature accomplishes. So basically, sets allows you to keep all of your document sets split up into one-page PDFs with very small file sizes, but to view them as if it was one huge multi-page document. So you're getting kind of the best of both worlds. You're getting the easy navigation, but with the lightness and flexibility of the individual files. So that's really what we're shooting for with sets. So with that, let me show you kind of some of the new things we've introduced with sets. So as I add files, it's going to ask me to select a categories template. By default, you're going to have this construction template, which conforms to AIA standards. It's just included with Revu. But you can also create your own templates, essentially assigning categories to these different sheets by discipline. So after I load in these sheets, I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. Let me find some sets documents here. So I'm going to go ahead and load in my original drawings, and I'm going to mix in all of my revisions as well. And it does not matter in what order I'm adding these to the set. Revu is going to figure that out for me. And one of the things you'll notice right here, see this category? So it's automatically assigning categories to these sheets by discipline, and it's doing that by the naming conventions that we set up in our category template. So this is already right out of the box conforming to AIA standards. If you have your own naming conventions you're using, you can absolutely set those up and override that. I'm sorting by file name and page label in this case. Actually, you know what? Let's do file name and page index. And I also have some additional options I can set in terms of revision filters, what I want it to do with previous revisions, whether they're crossed out or grayed out or shadowed or whatever, how I want those revisions to be displayed, whether they're stacked on top of each other or highlighted. and also what I'm doing with the markups. So I definitely want to bring over my markups. I'll just go ahead and leave them unflattened though. And just like before, I want to stamp those previous revisions as being superseded. So let's proceed with those options and take a look at what we end up with here. So this modify pages dialog, this is essentially asking me if it's okay to copy markups from the current pages to the revised pages. And if I have certain sheets that I do not want to bring the markups over, I can simply remove them from this list. If for whatever reason they weren't matched up correctly, I can move them up or down in the list with those buttons as well. Or if I don't want to bring over markups at all, let's say I change my mind, I don't want to do it, I can just hit skip and skip that entirely. But let's go ahead and do it so you guys can see it in action. So Revu has just created my set here, and if I look in the thumbnails panel, I've got all my different, these are one-page PDFs, separate one-page PDFs, but I'm viewing them like a multi-page document, and all I have to do is just click on these, and it will launch them in the main window. And in addition to this sort of thumbnails view, I can also switch to a list view. So here in this list view, you can see that it separated things out according to those categories that I set up, those structural, architectural, and so on and so forth. And it really just kind of makes things easier to navigate. But you may be wondering, well, what about some of those sheets where we had revisions that we added to them? Well, let me scroll down and find one for you. Here we go. So this A201 has a revision. Anytime you have revisions in there, Revu is going to default to stacking the newest revision on top. So you can see right here, this is revision 1 right there. If I want to view older ones, I can hit this little blue back arrow and navigate to my older ones. And you can see that big superseded stamp. There's no question that this is an old version. So helps to kind of keep things organized. You have some revision tracking there, and you can really, make sure you're staying up to date with the most current copy there. And something else that's new in sets this year that's really cool is if I want to run document comparison or overlay documents on these two revisions, I can simply right-click right in the thumbnails panel and do that right from the right-click menu. So compare documents or overlay pages. So really cool stuff there. Alright, so Sets 3.0, bottom line, it makes it easier than ever to view, organize, and utilize those single-page PDFs. So now that we've gone over how to organize our files, I want to talk about the enhancements to markup tools. So before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and just close out this set and open up a fresh sheet for us. This one right here will work just fine. So I mentioned before that Cloud Plus is a new markup tool for us. So what we found is that a lot of folks, probably most of the folks on this call, do clouds and callouts kind of like this in conjunction with each other. You cloud your area, you have a callout coming off of it. I can ask, is this ADA compliant? Whatever I need there. And they kind of use it like that in conjunction with each other, which that wasn't really, particularly difficult, but we're all about efficiency over here. So we've created the new Cloud Plus tool, which combines these into a single markup. And you can access the Cloud Plus tool up here in the markups panel at the top, going to shapes. It's right there. There's also a hotkey assigned to it, K. Or in some profiles, I'm in the construction profile, it's along the right-hand side here. So with this, I can essentially set my cloud, and then immediately I have my call-out coming off of it with the leader line that can move around, and I can add whatever I need to. So add mullion detail. There we go. So just kind of cutting down on the number of clicks. Also great things about this being a single markup is it's easier to move around. I can just move it as one cohesive markup. And if you look in the markups list, it also appears as a single markup in the markups list. So in cases where you have lots and lots and lots of markups on these documents, it just cuts down on the number of appearances in the markups list, makes it easier to manage. So that's Cloud Plus. It's simple, but it's really cool and really handy. So hopefully you guys find some good use out of it. So onwards, the next markup tool I want to cover is sketch tools. And I mentioned that this is a request that we got all the time. It's a heavily requested feature, and I'm really stoked to see it released in this version. So let me show you an example of what I'm talking about. So I have this site plan right here. Let's say I had a plan trailer, and I wanted to essentially add the location of my plan trailer onto the site plan. Well, before, the way I would do that is, just through maybe a rectangle markup and, draw my trailer on there. But what if I want that to be, to the specific dimensions of the trailer, and I know that this is a 50-foot by 20-foot trailer? This method, just drawing it on there, is kind of less than ideal. So what I can do instead is use our sketch tools so that I could sketch to the embedded scale that's already stored within this drawing. So if I go to my sketch tools up here, I'll use that rectangle one. And as I drag it out, you'll notice that Revu it has that little pop-up window showing me the height, width, and rotation of this rectangle that I'm drawing. So I still have the freedom of clicking and dragging it out. But in this scenario where I know for a fact this trailer is 50 feet long and I just want to type it in, I can do that. So I can say this is 50 feet by 20 feet. And just to make things interesting, let's add a rotation in there. Let's say it's at 90 degrees rotation. So there you go. There is my plan trailer placed on the drawing to my exact dimensions according to the embedded scale of the drawing. And just to add another interesting thing in here, I can also toggle on a caption that shows me my, my square footage and even add a label to it. So I can say this is my plan trailer. And let's rotate that caption. That way it's, that way it's a little easier to read. There we go. So there's my handy plan trailer right there. So sketch to scale tools, really heavily requested feature. Glad to see it in this release. It's not going to be replacing AutoCAD anytime soon, but I'm definitely sure that folks will get a lot of use out of it. So the next one I want to go over is the dynamic toolset scaler. So in order to illustrate that, I'm going to open up this drawing that I have right here, which has a viewport in it. So you'll notice that my my drawing is 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. That is the main sort of master scale. But up here in the viewport, it's 1/4 inch equals a foot. And if I look at my viewports within Revu, I can also see that right here. So here's the 1/8 of an inch equals a foot for the main document. And then down here, when I select that viewport, I can see the scale of that viewport here. So it's different scales. Now, in previous versions of Revu, this presented a problem. Let's say, for example, I had these markup tools here I wanted to use. In old versions of Revu, what you would have to do is essentially create one tool set for the 1/8 of an inch equals a foot scale and a completely separate tool set for 1/4 inch equals a foot in order to have them, sort of scaled properly, which is kind of less than ideal. So with the new dynamic tool set scaler, what it allows me to do is I can essentially set a sort of master scale for these markup tools. So essentially the baseline scale that I had whenever I first created these markups. And now that I've established that baseline, if I want to, for example, place a sink on here, you'll notice if I have the sink over here where it's 1/8 of an inch equals a foot, and then I move it over to my viewport, it scales automatically. So this means that I can essentially use the same tool set regardless of scale. So pretty cool stuff. And you can absolutely override this if you'd like to. There's a little toggle switch right here. If I click off this ruler, it will turn off that feature, and now when I move it over, it will stop scaling automatically. But extremely handy feature, especially for those folks utilizing viewports and wanting to easily jump between different scales without having to worry about different tool sets. All right, so with that, as the project moves closer to completion, we get to begin the often painful process of punch and back checks. And we have a couple of enhancements in Revu 2015 that can be used to help eliminate redundancy and increase accountability and productivity throughout this punch and back check process. So firstly, I want to show you Spaces 2.0, the improvement to the existing Spaces feature. In order to do that, let's open up these two drawings. So for those who are not necessarily familiar with Spaces, Spaces allows you to define zones on your drawing. So I can define zones and also rooms within those zones. And the great thing about this is as you place markups into those zones and rooms, it will track it in the markups list. So you can see exactly where those markups appear and kind of sort and filter and navigate them far more easily. Well, one of the problems with Spaces before is if I had this A201 with all my spaces, cleanly set up here, and I wanted the same spaces on this other drawing here, A202, what I would have had to do before is basically rebuild all of these spaces in order to recreate them. Well, that's certainly no fun. We don't want to do that. So what you can do instead is just copy or hit Control-C, your hotkey, and then go to your new sheet and hit Control-Shift-V. And there's my spaces right there. I just pasted it right on there. So Control-Shift-V, that is the hotkey combination for paste in place. So paste in place, it not only works with spaces, it also works with markups. It allows you to paste in the exact same coordinates that you copied from. So this is great for things like spaces. So now I don't have to recreate all these different spaces. I can just copy them over. This is awesome if you're dealing with, for example, a high-rise building or you have the same floor plan over and over and over. Awesome. So other really cool things you can do with spaces is if I want to take an area measurement of a room, I can just select that room or that zone, right-click on it, and create an area measurement. So I can see that this is 110 square feet. Also, I can easily link to spaces. So as I kind of hover over them on the list, you see that little green hyperlink icon. If I click that and then navigate to somewhere on the drawing that I want to hyperlink, let's say I want to hyperlink this to take me to that space. Now, when I click on that spot, it jumps me right to that space that I defined for the hyperlink. So really good improvements with spaces. It makes them even more useful than ever. So next, I want to cover Capture 2.0. It's another improvement to an existing feature. So with that, I'm going to open up this back check document. Actually, this is a prime example of what I was just talking about, dropping markups into defined zones or areas. If you go back to spaces, you can see I have these zones here defined. If I look at my markups list down here, and just collapse this, you can see it's also populating where the spaces, where these markups are automatically as well. So this makes spaces especially useful with punch and back check workflows. But anyway, so Capture was a feature that we introduced last year that allowed you to embed images within a markup. So I have this punch key right here, this WR punch key. If I hit this little camera icon, I can see these images from the site that I embedded directly in there. And I can drop more images in there either directly from my camera right there. So I'll do that. Oop, I'm in... let me go to photo mode. There we go. So I can drop that image directly into that gallery, so it's added in there. If I decide I don't really like that photo, I can just delete it and remove it. You can also add images that are saved on your hard drive as well. And if I want to export all these images, I can absolutely do that. So this is really cool stuff, but this was all there last year. What's new this year is not only can you embed images, you can embed video with audio. So I don't have the audio hooked up, so you're not going to hear it, but if I play the video here, you can see this person took a short video showing exposed conduits on the job site. So this is kind of a really advanced way for your teams to communicate the conditions on the job site and various issues that they run into. So really cool stuff. Also, really neat thing about Capture is that now you can sort and filter by capture media right here in the markups list. So if I wanted to apply a filter and see all of the markups where I have capture media, I can do that. And I can also create a capture summary showing or summarizing all those various photos and videos I embedded in there. And you have the option to attach the media as linked files. For the sake of brevity, I'm not going to do that right now, but I'll just create the report there. And you can see all of these images from the various captures we did dropped right on there, as well as that video that we saw earlier. So really neat stuff. So Capture, like many things, better than ever. Alrighty, with that, I want to jump back into my prior slide deck to kind of go over some of the other new things here. Let me jump back to where I was. Here we go. So I mentioned there's some significant studio enhancements. So there's enhancements both in studio sessions, the real-time collaboration piece, as well as studio projects, which is more the lightweight document management system. So firstly, with sessions, like I mentioned before, you can now schedule studio session in dates ahead of time. And I'll show you what I mean by that. Let me jump into an example session that I have. So if I know for a fact I want this session to automatically close out at a given date and time, if I go to settings here, I can set an expiration date for this. And as your expiration date approaches, you're going to get multiple email notifications to remind you. You can always delay it out to a further date if you'd like, but let's say you miss the boat and your session gets closed out, maybe while you're on vacation or something. You can absolutely go back and reopen those sessions at a later date, so you're not locked out forever. But this is a handy tool, so you no longer have to manually go in and close out those sessions. Also, important thing to note, any studio sessions that were created out of a studio project, you can now update the project copy of those files without having to end the session first. You can just right-click to update, and the latest version of the file will be uploaded and available to everyone else on your team. So, great stuff. Also, we have improvements to projects. So the most requested feature we got with projects was being able to define user permissions on a per folder basis, which you can absolutely do now. So I have my project folders that I've populated in there with all my various documents. If I go into settings, I can now define folder permissions, and you can do this at the individual user level. You can also do it at the group level as well. And not only can I limit what they're able to do, I can also limit whether they're even able to see the folder in the first place. So if I don't even want them to be able to know it exists, I can do that if I'm so inclined. Also, what's new in Review 2015, you have the ability to share download links to specific Studio project files where they can download the file without ever having to set foot in Studio. So if I want to send this A100 drawing out to somebody, I can simply share a link. It's essentially a hyperlink that they can open in their web browser and just download the file that way. I can define whether that link is good forever, as long as the project is open, or if it's just 24 hours. And I can also define whether it requires a password. And if I want all the markups to be flattened so they're not allowed to change it, I can do that as well. So extremely handy for sharing those project files with folks that are maybe not on the Studio bandwagon yet. Great. So with that, I want to touch on a few more improvements that we've launched with this version. Let me jump back into my deck here. Studio Go. So our iPad app has been significantly improved with the launch of Studio Go. Studio Go is a feature that essentially allows you to cache your files, your documents ahead of time so that they render tremendously faster. And this can be adjusted in your user settings, so you can either increase your cache to maximize your rendering speed, or you can decrease it if you want to be conservative on your space allocation. But this has made the iPad app much more user-friendly and enjoyable across the board. A couple other general Studio improvements that I want to touch on before I move onwards. And these apply to Studio in general, not only iPad, but across the board. You can now change your Studio email address if you are so inclined. You also will experience significantly improved upload speeds, both into sessions and projects. Your upload speeds will be much faster. And also we have at-rest file encryption. So when a file is stored in Studio, it is marked as encrypted as soon as it's checked back in as well. Great. So a few more enhancements. So for Microsoft Office, in Review 2015, you can now export scanned documents to Microsoft Word or Excel and have them show up as editable text. And an important thing to note is that includes, even if you don't have Extreme with the OCR functionality, even in Standard, if you export out to Word or Excel, it will be editable text. So that is really great. You can also export sections of a document. Instead of exporting the entire PDF to Word or Excel, you can just select a certain section of it, such as an index table or price schedule. So that is awesome. And lastly, digital signatures. So we have a new digital signatures panel that you'll automatically be prompted to open anytime you open a PDF with digital signatures on it. And from there, you can easily see who signed the document and jump to where that signature was placed, so you don't have to waste a lot of time hunting around trying to find those signatures on there. So with that, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to jump on this webinar. We definitely appreciate it. I know I'm stoked for all the new stuff in Review 2015, and hopefully you guys are excited too, and you'll find it really helpful. And before I kick things to Q&A, I want to once again thank John and the rest of the Orange Blade staff for hosting this webinar. They are an awesome partner, platinum level Bluebeam partner, and if you have any questions or quote requests or any needs whatsoever in relation to Bluebeam, you're in fantastic hands with John and the rest of his team. So his information is right up there. And you can always just go to his website, orangeblade.com. So with that, I want to go ahead and kick things back over to you, John, and I guess we can just run through Q&A.
Okay, well, I'm on. If anybody has any questions, Let's see here. I think that the few questions that came in through chat have already been addressed, and they're available to all participants. So I did throw a link up where we'll be posting the recording. So it's going to be in multiple places. We're going to throw it on our website, our blog, our Facebook page, and our Twitter feed. So those are 3 places you can find it. Steve, any timeline on the recording? End of the week, maybe early next week?
I can have that to you before the end of the day.
Okay, so we'll upload and make sure it's, the audio and everything is linked up fine. So we're looking at probably tomorrow sometime. We'll notify everybody that it's posted. Okay. So is everybody off audio right now, Steve?
Yep. So all the lines are muted. So if you have any questions, please type them either into the chat window or the Q&A. And John and I would be more than happy to get questions or answers to any questions you have. So don't be shy. We have a full 11 minutes left here, and I'm also happy to stay on a little longer if we have more questions.
And by the way, if anybody comes up with a question after we end the session, feel free to email me at john@orangeblade.com or support@orangeblade.com. We'll be sure to answer it as fast as we can. I did put a statement, an unprompted statement on the chat that the folder-based permissions in Studio have been on our internal wish list for a while, and they're finally here. We're so happy. And just to elaborate on that, it opens the door for a lot of our customers who manage a bid process in using Bluebeam Revu. So look for a video on that coming up soon. We're pretty excited to put that one together. That's probably going to be a week or 2 out, but it's going to be some pretty good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, Steve, I think it's a wrap. We don't have any questions. If any come up later, we'll be sure to address them. So I wanted to thank everybody for attending. Have a great afternoon, morning, evening, based on your location. Thanks for joining us. Take care, everyone.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.